Hello, everyone. I'm Ernie Humphrey, the CEO of Treasury Webinars. I'd like to thank everyone for taking the time to join us for our webinar today, 10 tips to deliver cash forecasting success. First and foremost, I hope everyone is safe and healthy, and I want to convey the sincere gratitude of myself and everyone at High Radius, our webinar partner, for all the relatives, friends, and families of each attendee who are on the front lines of fighting the coronavirus and what these people are doing every single day to help keep us all safe and healthy. I'd also like to thank our sponsor today, High Radius, whose strong commitment to thought leadership in serving the Treasury and finance professions makes this webinar possible today. Treasury leaders are redefining what business as usual looks like when Treasury teams are working remotely. What does the new business as usual mean for bank relationships and fraud mitigation? How can Treasury professionals effectively inform, engage bank partners, and deliver cash forecasts that matter? Today, you'll discover 10 specific tips how you can deliver cash forecasting success in any business environment. Before we delve into the content, I'm going to offer a few quick words about Treasury Webinars, cover a few housekeeping items, cover our learning objectives as they offer the value proposition for you for investing an hour of your valuable time with us today, and then introduce my esteemed co-speaker for today's webinar, Tracy Knight. At Treasury Webinars, we offer webinars designed to empower Treasury, AP, and AR success at companies of all sizes across all industries. We only do what we do best, which is virtual events. More on that later. Now, let's go ahead and cover a few housekeeping items. Those of you who are interested in receiving CTP credits for today's webinar, you'll have to stay on for the duration of the webinar. You'll have to answer all of our polling questions, and you'll have to take our short survey at the end of the webinar today. If anyone has any questions regarding CTP credits for today's webinar, please send an email to ernie@treasurywebinars.com. Again, that's ernie@treasurywebinars.com. We would love to get your questions today, and we can take your questions at any time in the questions area of your GoToWebinar control panel. Fear not, if we do not get to your question during the webinar, we will get to your question after the webinar by direct outreach to you. Finally, I appreciate everyone's consideration in taking the short survey, which will launch at the end of the webinar today, as we always strive to improve the ROI we offer our event attendees for their valuable time. Let's go ahead and really go over our learning objectives as they offer the value proposition, our value proposition to you for investing an hour of your valuable time today. We want you to be able to understand the dimensions of effective cash forecasting. They stay the same in any business environment. Identify and mitigate inherent barriers to cash forecasting success at your company. Understand the benefits of leveraging the right technology to achieve cash forecasting at your company in any business environment, and revise specific areas of your cash forecasting process to improve the value realized from your cash forecasting efforts. Now, that is on paper a tall order, so I'm thrilled to have Tracy Ferguson Knight with me today on the webinar to help me do that. Tracy has over 25 years of Treasury experience and has helped hundreds of companies select and implement technology to transform their Treasury departments. She is experienced as both a practitioner and a vendor, and brings a unique combination of knowledge and skills to truly understand a company's current state and help them see where their future states can evolve. She has a BS in economics from the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania, and is popular and frequent speaker at local, regional, national AFP events. Tracy, as always, it's a pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you, Ernie. I'm glad to be here.
All right, so how are Tracy and I going to accomplish our learning objectives today? Well, first we're going to set the stage a little bit, and I want to talk about the coronavirus and Treasury at a little bit of a high level, and then we'll dive down a little bit, and then we'll give some color and context around some amazing survey results from the Global Crisis Response Survey. And then we'll really get into our specific 10 tips to deliver cash forecasting success. And I really am excited about this webinar because we're offering you 10 specific things that you can take action on immediately. And then we'll wrap things up with some concluding thoughts and really what all this means for you today and going forward. So let's start things off with some sentiments and some lessons learned here. And so let's talk a little bit about managing Treasury in the remote reality. Of course, cash forecasting is a big piece of that. But one of the things that I often advise people to do is you want to understand your challenges, right, in managing a remote workforce. What are your company's challenges? What are your team members? And then also, what are your challenges? And so how do we address these challenges and really identify opportunities to all be more collaborative and offer more value to each other? You need to understand the consequences that the coronavirus will have on your suppliers, customers, banks, and your service providers. And so that's always important, but especially in the term realm of cash forecasting, all of these folks will impact the accuracy of your cash forecast. So your suppliers, your customers, your banks, obviously, and your other service providers. And then you should understand the consequences that the coronavirus will have on your Treasury success metrics. And so even today, as we focus on cash forecasting, your cash forecasting metric success are intertwined, right, with your AR and AP metrics as well. And so there's an interconnectivity there. And so we need to understand, will those metrics change? Why or why not? How are they going to change? What can we control? What can we not control? And then also my advice, and from what I've heard from speaking to, I don't know, dozens and dozens of folks throughout the crisis, is communicate more with your employees. I think that's incredibly important. You need to identify ways to keep your employees engaged and your colleagues as well, and your service providers. And so just a few of the things that I've seen and experienced directly. You actually can have a virtual coffee hour. However you're going to do that, I suggest that you send folks a Starbucks card. That always will motivate them to attend. We've seen virtual, some karaoke contests. Guess whose pet this is, guess what the office environment is, and playing some games. So one of the games that I like to play is like Family Feud. So you can do that online. You can do some gaming. So you want to keep your employees engaged. And also you just want to check in, right? How are you doing? What can I do for you? What can I do to be more supportive of you? And I think aside from the health consequences, which are terrible, I think we've actually learned quite a bit on the importance of making sure people are engaged and just touching base with them more and having more of a sense of the temperature of how things are going for people on a personal level. Again, you want to communicate more with your suppliers and customers and banks and service providers and all your colleagues. So it's not, I think all of us have learned it's not time to shut down, it's time to open up, and it's time to communicate even more. And then that gets us into this mindset. When we go back to the office, let's not forget that, right? Let's communicate more. You want to identify ways to offer more value to your business partners and your internal business partners. And this is the one that I have at 8, but I probably should have it number 1. Realign on your expectations with your boss, your staff, your colleagues, your suppliers, your customers, your banks, and service providers, because there's a lot of dynamics going on here. And so it's incredibly important to realign on expectations. And so if you're not able to meet what your expectations are, if you think there's any kind of disconnect there, it's extremely important that you communicate that. Now, me, as a longtime professional, CFO, treasurer, all those good things, for me, if I know that someone is not going to deliver as usual and they tell me, that is amazing to me, right? I don't want to be blindsided. I don't want to not know what's going on. So let's realign. Let's talk about why those expectations are changing. And sometimes those things are perceptions that we can all help each other avoid. Tracy, is there any of these points here or a couple points here that really stick out to you and resonate with you in conversations that you've been having?
Definitely. I think the communication one is so important, definitely with your employers or employees, but the communication you have with your business partners, even if you're a company that maybe needs to slow down on paying some of your bills a bit, having that open line of communication can maintain the good relationship that you might have with those key suppliers, those key customers. So communication, I think, is the most important thing here across the board.
Yeah, thanks, Tracy. Just kind of dovetail on that. And I think that's incredibly important that, during the crisis is when the real relationships are formed. And so, if you're honest with your customers and you may be collaborative. And so obviously on the cash forecasting side, I would rather know that a big customer is going to pay late than assuming, right? That they're going to pay me and then I all of a sudden don't get the money and I need to borrow, I need to do an FX transaction. But we have to build that trust, right, with our suppliers. And so I think that's incredibly important. So let's go ahead and launch our first polling question here. We're going to be talking a lot about technology. So let's go ahead and level set a bit before we start diving in there. So just asking you to share with us the current state of treasury automation at your company. You might already be there, glad, you've already done it. Maybe you wish you had done it, right? Obviously, before everything hit. You plan on doing that as soon as you get back in the office, or you just don't see the need right now, or don't see the need in any time in the foreseeable future. One of the things that I've found pretty fascinating, and I'm glad to see it, is a lot of companies have taken this time to invest in technology, and I kind of had to shift my mindset. And what I came to understand was this is a good time to invest in technology. Things are needed. People have an appetite. Sometimes the CFO would be like, I don't know if we really need that. It's not a priority. Well, do you want to get cash in? Do you want to pay your suppliers? Do you want these things to happen? These things need to be done. And so I found that a lot of companies are taking advantage of this opportunity here, and also getting that strategic seat at the table. So I think that's pretty powerful as well. Let me go ahead and leave the polling question up for just another few seconds. Then we'll take a quick peek at the results, and then we'll get Tracy's thoughts. And then before we dive in too deep, again, we're going to start to talk about technology. And so I want Tracy to spend just a minute or two telling us a little bit about HighRadius and where they're at. Absolutely, probably the leading firm in terms of technology and technology innovation in the AR, and definitely in the cash forecasting space. Let me go ahead, close the poll. Let's go ahead and take a quick peek at those results. So we have 38% already done it, 33%. I'm glad to see that number so high, the honesty there. 13% as soon as you get back in the office. I would advise those of you to take another look at that. Those of you that think there's no need, I think it might be interesting for you to take a look at the value, right? If you're not automating, there's where you stand depends on where you sit. But from my perspective, as being a longtime practitioner, having conversations, it's seldom that automation is not going to be something that's going to add value. Tracy, does anything stick out to you here?
The wish we had done it, I'm not surprised. Automation definitely has continued to increase, particularly across the finance department and Treasury. With the advent of Treasury management systems over 20 years ago, and continuing with a variety of kind of point solutions. And then you add in the availability of cloud solutions, which has brought the price point down significantly, where there are ideal products for every different kind of company along the continuum from very small to very large. So I think there's a lot of technology available, and you have to find what works just right for your company and where you are right now. At HighRadius, we've been focused primarily in the order to cash space, which is really focused on accounts receivables with cash application, deductions, collections, credit, and electronic invoice presentment and payments. However, throughout the years, we have been utilizing artificial intelligence and machine learning to accurately forecast receivables for many of our collections clients. And we've seen throughout the years that there's been this kind of white space, this open area around cash forecasting for Treasury. Treasury management systems have been around for a long time, and they usually have a cash forecasting module, but yet cash forecasting has still been the #1 issue to be solved within Treasury for a long, long time. So that says current technologies haven't really done the job. So we thought we would apply and build out for Treasury this technology that we had already developed within our AR products, utilizing machine learning to accurately forecast cash. So within our treasury management module, we're focused primarily on cash forecasting. We also have a cash management module to give global cash visibility and cash positioning. And then a module that will be focused on mostly next year around bank reconciliation. So there's a variety of products, including ours here at HighRadius, that are designed for companies of a variety of different sizes and complexities to help you automate many of the common functions that happen within Treasury, so you can focus more on value-added activities.
Thank you so much, Tracy. And just to kind of dovetail on that a little bit, it's about having the best technology. This isn't a HighRadius commercial. High Radius is the leader. And one of the things that has really been amazing to me is to see this all develop. Now, how many of us have listened to a cash forecasting presentation prior to the last maybe year or 2 years ago and heard the same presentation for like 15 years? There hasn't been any change in innovation there. And High Radius has really been out on the front of that in that problem. And you'll see some of that today on the cash forecasting piece. And then as Tracy mentioned, they're addressing other issues that in my mind have not been addressed yet, right, by technology and especially bank reconciliation. And I can tell you from personal experience as a practitioner that these were headaches. And so that innovation is welcome in the Treasury space. Let's go ahead and dive in a little bit. Those of you hopefully all of you are aware, there has been a survey going on for, I believe, since early February. We started out as the Global Crisis Monitor. So there's a group of companies that serve the Treasury profession that have actually worked together to do a survey. Isn't that a novel idea? And I love to see this. And so even though some of us compete, we've all decided it was important to offer our insights and let people know what other people are thinking and doing and give them, right? Okay, that makes sense for me. This is what I should be thinking about, which is incredibly powerful. So Treasury Webinars is a member and High Radius is as well. And so we originally were doing this every single week. Then we moved to 2 weeks, and I think we're going to go out a little bit into recovery mode here in every month. But I just wanted to share some insights. And so from the most recent survey results, one of the things that we're starting to see is folks are starting to go back into the office. 20% on site, in my opinion, with what we're seeing in the COVID virus realm, and I'm not surprised, is we got a little bit too excited and open too quickly. So unfortunately, I think those folks are going to be going right back into the remote environment. And that's where I've told people, and the survey showed us the importance of business continuity plans. So a lot of companies may have had a plan, but it was only for a week. And those companies that haven't invested in making things right, assuming that we're going to get back to the office, even when we started within a month or 2 months, we just don't know. So we have to be able to offer success in any business environment, remote or otherwise. We don't know what the future is going to hold. There's obviously been a focus on liquidity. And one of the things that we saw a blip last week, accounts receivable actually moved away from being the #1 concern after being the rock star, of course, for weeks. And what we've seen, I'll talk about this a little bit later, is how those sentiments have changed given the dynamics in the global economy. And then we started to see more focus in terms of the work from home issues. Tracy, does anything stick out to you here? Anything you want to add about the survey?
Yeah, definitely the work from home issues is the one that jumped out at me, mainly because I have worked from home for 20 years and it's never been a problem. I love it. However, with everyone working from home, all of a sudden my work hours really have been extended dramatically. I
Mm-hmm.
find that with so many people working from home, work is being done early in the morning, all throughout the workday, into the evening. And because of this need to try to balance home issues
Right.
with work issues, work has been just expanded where you might be maybe breaking up your day, but it makes every day just never ending work. I get emails at midnight, at 2 a.m., at all times of the day and night. And so I think it has created kind of a new work environment, and maybe more of us need to find a way to still put some bounds
Right.
around our workday.
That's an amazing point because I have never really heard anyone bring that up. I think that's something that we really need to focus on is that work-life balance, right? Because a lot of people just assume that you work remotely, you're going to have more free time and you're not going to be as engaged. But I think companies, I haven't seen anyone talk about this yet. Maybe we put boundaries around when emails are sent or when calls are made. Now, some of us, of course, I know you're as well, Tracy, you have colleagues that work across the globe, but we still all need to be cognizant of that work-life balance. So thank you very much, Tracy. And so just some of the sentiments that we've seen here that are important. The health impact, which is obviously important on a personal and professional level. What's the response, right? What's it going to do to our business? We don't really know. We're starting to see some military things kind of creep up here. Elections, which will become more and more. It's just interesting to see how these things really play out. I just also want to point out that it only takes 5 minutes to take the survey. So you can take, if you've never taken the survey, if you have taken it and stopped, please continue to take the survey. The insights are tremendous, and it helps the Treasury profession as well as everyone else. And so there's a lot of detail behind this. This is incredibly important from the most recent survey. Compared to typical times you're paying your vendors, so AR is pretty important. And so just some interesting dynamics here. We started to see, like period 3, we started to see stayed the same, 61%. Period 10, 58%. Oh, now we're down to 51%, right? And so, our cash forecasts were kind of blown out of the water, and then they were kind of maybe had a little bit stability. But then I think the reason this really dropped to 48 was I think people started to see what the impact was going to be on the receivables, right? On there, and am I going to be able to pay? Who's going to pay? And then we kind of saw this. Okay, and then we started, after we've gone through a couple cycles, 30-day cycles, we started to see this, but then we're starting to say, okay, stayed the same. So those extended terms are going up. And one point I made earlier, I think it's important that we realize that extended terms might be possible, and we might need to request them, and that's okay. Anything stand out to you here, Tracy?
Not unexpected, I don't think. I mean, these are some of the key levers a company in a cash crunch can utilize. And so figuring out and collecting more aggressively, paying a little slower. If cash is a problem, these are things you have to utilize.
Yeah, kind of like I said before, where you stand depends on where you sit. So this is a lot of information. So I just want to show you that this is the breadth of information that's available in the survey. And so it's interesting to see the dynamics, the business continuity plan. At first, it was like, wow, this is the most important thing. And I think as we start to see that, once we see the light at the end of the tunnel, I don't know when that's going to be, this will go back up. Safety protocols. They started at 3, waned a little bit, but then we started to hear we're going to go back to the office, right? And then they went back up. So it's not necessarily that it's showing us surprising results. It's like, oh, okay, that's what I expect. That makes sense. I'm in with every, that makes sense. Is what I expect to see. It's what everyone else has expected to see. And some of these things are company specific, direct impact to the business. I think that's not surprising. And then access to liquidity. So first, people didn't know what to expect, right? Well, maybe it's not going to be so bad, and then we were down, it came up to the biggest concern, and then we kind of had a little bit of a blip there. And then this is a little bit interesting. I think we actually switched the frequency of the survey here. This one stuck out to me a little bit here, but I think there was some news event which made us think maybe that we were going to get back in the office. So there's just a lot of information here. Tracy, are there any of these areas that you think are more important, or things that you think people should keep their eye on a little more?
I think the number 1 and it's been 1, 2, and 3 are without a doubt the most important things. In the end, what is going to be the long-term impact to our company? Some companies just aren't going to make it, and that's just a fact of life. We've already seen several large retailers, for example, and car rental companies declare bankruptcy. And of course, some companies are booming, but certainly not all of us. And then what does that mean long-term to our economy? So I'm not surprised that the prospect of recession and the long-term impact on your own company are the most important things and are high ranking in people's thoughts.
Thanks, Tracy. So I just wanted to share this. Craig Jeffrey at Strategic Treasurer always shares some very interesting quotes along with the survey. So I forgot to give Craig and the team at Strategic Treasurer kudos for putting the coalition together. But I love this quote. I'm not afraid of storms, for I'm learning how to sail my ship. And I think this is a tremendous value that the survey results offer. It's helping people learn how to sail their ship. And so just some lessons learned before we dig into the 10 tips that I think are important. And so it's very important that we take our learnings back to the office, right? Some of these were very painful. And so let's not forget what we learned, and it's going to help make us all better. I like this concept of being centered. So I've come up with this concept of lesson learned. being centered. As Tracy mentioned, communication, more is always better. Engagement, we have to be engaged with all of our business partners, internally and externally. Let's do networking, right? I'm about to launch an online finance and treasury community. We need community. We need a trusted, noise-free environment. We need ways to just like take the temperature. If what I'm doing is that right, I'm in manufacturing, you're in manufacturing. How do we need to connect with our peers? And one of the, I think, benefits of the crisis is people are understanding the value of doing that virtually, but they need that noise-free environment. Obviously, technology, right? Which Tracy mentioned. A lot of you, 30-something% said you wish you would have done it. Let's look at it now. Let's not wait till we get back to the office. Let's look at that value proposition. And if you want to have a conversation about what that looks like for your company, I know that Tracy and I'd be happy to have that conversation. Areas you might be looking, what's out there, things to think about. And that's why HighRadius is an amazing strategic partner of mine. If someone asks me a question, I'm going to give them the honest answer. I'm vendor agnostic, but I know that Tracy will say, if you're in a certain position, she'll say, well, this might be a journey down the road, but you might want to look at this vendor and technology. That's what relationships are all about, and networking. And so experimentation, innovation, this is the thing that I think we've learned. But I think this is what we need to be. We have a culture of experimentation and innovation, which for finance is sometimes hard, right? And I think we need to embrace that and then realign on these expectations here. And then this is from Craig and his team, and this is more tactical, but I've used this slide several times, and this just really speaks to me as a person that loves and still lives Treasury. Specific tips you want to monitor and model, and of course now we have to do that on a daily basis, right? How many of you are being asked for this from your CFO if you're not the CFO every single day, every single hour? We have to have visibility and technology to do it. Track cash, AR sales, update your cash flow models. Things are changing. Take this global crisis recovery monitor survey, and then be sure you're in tune not only with the survey. What are your peers doing and thinking? Let's go to LinkedIn groups. Let's go to these online conferences that are town hall based where we can actually communicate and we can network. Security, right? Understand how your payments process are different. Look at your payments exposures. This is one of my favorite soapboxes. Payments training. Make sure everyone that is involved in your payments process end-to-end understands the risk, right? Mitigate the risk exposures that are coming, and those are changing in a remote environment, and technology helps us lock those up. And then as Tracy mentioned, it's very important. Some of us aren't used to working from home. Let's put up those boundaries. Let's cross-train. And how do you optimize your team's work? And then adapt, right? You might need to change your inventory, your goals, your processes. And so I love this slide. Tracy, is anything on this slide really speak out to you?
No, one thing in particular, I think COVID-19 and this pandemic has just magnified where the failures might be in our processes. And
Right.
this is just all about making sure that you acknowledge them and plug the hole.
Right. Thank you. Okay. So let's start to dive in here. So Tracy and I are going to take turns going through our 10 tips for you. And I also want to mention that if you'd like a copy of the slides, you can send an email to Ernie@treasurywebinars.com. We're happy to share those with you. So Tracy, over to you for tip number 1.
All right, tip number 1 is understanding the purpose of your forecast. I commonly get questions, how accurately should we be forecasting? What's a good percentage? What's a good forecast? How often should we be forecasting? And no matter what question you ask me, my first response is going to be a question to you. What's the purpose of your forecast? Whether you are in cash surplus or in cash deficit or somewhere along that continuum should be a key driver in all the things that you do. I was talking about the purpose of your forecast. So that should be the key driver in deciding everything about your forecast, the cadence of your forecast and how often you should do it. It might be much less if you are in a cash surplus situation, and certainly much, much more frequently when you are in cash deficit. In cash deficit, and depending on how much that might be, you might be in a weekly cadence or a daily cadence. Being very accurate might be much more important when you're in cash deficit. So consider that in all the different decisions that you make. On the next slide, Ernie.
Okay, I think we're we're on we're going to pivot to point number 2. So let me go ahead and take the ball here. So point number 2, I think sometimes we're not invested as we should be as in mapping your process in detail. And so in my mind, as those of you who listen to my webinars know, I get really into detail on AP and AR and all the processes. I think it's incredibly important, and that's going to inform your cash forecasting, and it's going to inform better efficiency in taking ownership of your cash conversion cycle. And so what do I mean by map your process? Again, I won't spend a lot of time on these slides, but if you are interested in having them just to review them later or want to review them with me, let me know. But I'll spend a lot of time, the majority of time here on AP and AR. But again, you want to map all the people, process, and technology involved, right? and then also, those of you who have never undergone this exercise, it will be enlightening to you. So that's where you'll start to see where you have issues. And as Tracy mentioned before, some of those issues have been highlighted here, and they're not going to go away. They'll need to be addressed. And so on process, just a high-level overview for you. I mean, if you're not in the AP weeds, these are things that you need to make sure you have visibility into, that your staff has visibility into what is driving the AP process. It's really important that we have efficiency, but we also want to make sure that we are having a commitment to our supplier relationships. We want to take control and how, when we pay, right? And that's more important today. So the process, capture, code, send, right? You got to verify and approve. You have to authorize for payment. Depending on your solution, you may have to send to a financial system, and you really want to have this complete audit and approval history. So again, I think the first 3 are places where we need to focus. Okay, how do things work? Capture, code, send, code, those great GL codes. All Treasury people love accounting, right? How is it verified and approved? Is that efficient? Is it manual? Are there risk exposures? And then we authorize that payment. And then how is that payment made? Now, I know you guys all want me to spend 20 minutes on this slide, but I'm not going to do that. So again, this is a slide you might want to review after the webinar is over, but I just want to show you the complexity of the dynamics and workflow just in putting this picture up for a few seconds. But if you've never gotten in the weeds, there's an awful lot going on. And so AP and AR are absolutely some of the most complex business processes that you're going to go through. And so it's very important that you understand that complexity is there, and it deserves the commitment. So just some of the issues: you have to approve your suppliers, which is more difficult in today's world, get folks onboarded, the transaction fees, payment status, communication, approvals, your AP staff, you got your IT staff, you have your procurement staff, you have your suppliers, you have your banks. And so I like to share that as well. So let's talk about the people. Again, talk about people, process, technology, procurement. How does that work? We have to identify and vet our suppliers, right? How are they involved? They help us identify and vet suppliers. They negotiate contracts. We want to get those payment terms in there. Some companies that I've talked to, they actually require or make it so that people do not, the checks or something that we don't want to do. On the AP side, we have supplier onboarding, supplier information and relationship management, and then we have our approvers, right? We have our PO approvers, supplier approvers. So there's a lot of people involved in that process. And so how do we remove efficiencies on that side? And then in terms of the technology that you want to go after, this is just something related to COVID. This is the technology that you want to look for. Collaboration, right? You need that online accessibility, remote ability. You need visibility. You need to have some sort of reporting that delivers intelligence for you and your accounting team, and then diligence. You need to enforce those internal controls. So on the AP side, and then the dynamics and workflow on the outside, just a really high overview of that. You have your credit, sales, invoicing, cash app, collection, and deduction. And so This is where people focus a lot. Okay, where are we getting the money in? This is where I'm not going to tell my Cash App story of how it used to take a week to do the Cash App. But these are things we have to be able to see, control, and enable people that impact those, the ability to be efficient. And then I really like this graphic here where they need to be managed together, and it doesn't need to be done in silos. And then for the AR, again, I'm just trying to walk you through the process, right? I under promise and over deliver, but these are just helping you understand the dynamics and things you probably want to spend some time on if you've never done so after the webinar. Hopefully this will facilitate conversations that you might want to have if you're not in AP in AR, maybe you're not in Treasury. Let's have those conversations. And then in terms of the technology, right? And this is where High Radius shines. Is on the cash application side, all sides, Cash App, credit, collections, deductions. And one of the amazing things on the cash forecasting side is being able to predict that payment date. And that's a little bit harder in today's environment, but that's something you need to focus on. Also need to focus on the communication with your suppliers, right? Nobody wants to have those issues. So let me go ahead and turn the floor back over to Tracy for point number 3.
Okay, which is understanding the drivers of your forecast accuracy. Now, there may be many different categories in your forecast, but understanding those categories, the volatility, and all those things will help you figure out what is the right cadence, what is the right level of accuracy for your forecast. So what we hear most commonly on the next slide is that accounts receivable is without a doubt the category that is the biggest in dollars and also the most difficult to forecast, given that it's hard to sometimes plan what your customer's behavior might be. So on the next slide, as you figure out what your categories then might be that you're going to focus on, you can take this approach, which is first thinking about how you should build your forecast, and this should be done category by category. How and where you're going to gather the data from, what method is right for modeling that data, and then how you're going to be able to track variance analysis, not just for one day, but for 1 day, 1 week, 1 month, 3 months. So if you are forecasting out and sometimes ask for even an end of quarter forecast, you need to know how accurate you've been at various points throughout the quarter at forecasting to that quarter end date. So on the next slide, we'll look at these different things that you need to consider for each category a little bit deeper. First, a bottoms-up approach. If accuracy is very important to you, and I do say if, because remember that the purpose of your forecast makes a difference in determining whether or not and to what degree accuracy matters. But the more accurate you must be, then you need to consider a bottoms-up approach. That means forecasting at the country or currency or entity or company code level so that you can roll those up into regions and roll that up into your global forecast. By doing so, you'll be able to analyze each one, figure out where your variances are coming from, and utilize that to help you improve your forecast. Utilizing technology as much as possible will make a difference. You can automate so many functions of gathering data from ERP systems, from other departments, from your bank portals, from internal sources so that you're all using the same source of data and having technology build out that first iteration of the forecast that you can, of course, manually impact as you need to. And the final slide is thinking about how you model each and every different category. For those categories that have a great deal of data and are very difficult, like AR and AP, utilizing the new technologies around machine learning can really make a difference in driving the accuracy higher. However, for categories like payroll, that tend to be more repetitive, much less variance typically, why do something difficult? Why pull out the big hammer when just a little hammer will work for that little bitty nail? For investments in debt, if you have them in a TMS, just bring those directly from their source, and so that you can bring together a forecast utilizing the very best method for every different category. And finally, variance analysis. It's so important. If you don't know how well you're doing at all the different iterations that you forecast, then how can you improve? If you're getting data from someone, if you don't provide them feedback, how can they improve? So it's a really important part of the process and important to do it not just for previous day, which is what I see most often, is that people set a position and they'll see their variance against the position. But what about your 1 week true forecast, your 1 month forecast, that quarter ending forecast? You need to know how you're doing at all of those different time periods.
Thanks, Tracy. Let me go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and launch our next polling question. Just want to kind of dovetail on the variance analysis. So one of the things which I find fascinating with some of the AI technology and then some of the virtual assistants that we've already seen from High Radius. This is my dream, and I don't think High Radius is all that far apart. So would it be nice if I could say, hey, my forecast is off by this. What do you what do you think the reason is? And the system will have learned what's driving those variance numbers, and it'll give you some idea. So I can tell you, as a Treasury practitioner, trying to figure out where that variance was coming from would take me hours, if not days, to do. So I think there's incredible power there, and that variance analysis is what helps us get better, and also helps us. And on the AI side, verifies what's driving the accuracy, and those things may be changing, right? Especially with COVID. So I'm asking you to just share with us, do you think you have the visibility and data you need relative to cash forecasting? And you can be honest. We're not going to share your results or anything there. And so you have not hardly, not really, getting better, you're close, and yes, you do. Just to remind everyone that's interested in receiving CTP credits for today's webinar, you'll have to answer all the polling question. I love everyone to share their thoughts with us as well. So let me go ahead and leave this up for another couple seconds here. And then we'll go ahead and take a quick peek. So we'll give you, there we go, a couple more seconds. Go ahead and get your votes in. Thank you so much. And then okay, this just sticks out to me. Come on now. I hope this is true. 34% have all the visibility and data you need. That's to me is amazing, but maybe you wanted to select it. I hope that's the case. And I'm glad to see that 33%. So we've got 67% of you, 2/3, which are good, seem to have that good understanding. And then 24% of you, or 8%. Well, let's help you figure out how you kind of move up that chain. Tracy, does this surprise you at all, these numbers?
A little bit. For 34% to say that they're kind of already where they need to be, I guess maybe it depends, of course, on the nature of your business. And once again, that purpose of your forecast. When I worked at a utility, it was easy to forecast. There was a very regular cadence. So for some businesses, it certainly is easier than others. For most, AR and AP are a problem and just exacerbated by COVID-19.
Thank you so much. Let me go ahead and really quickly. So number 4 is more of a quick hitter, but it's obviously a huge challenge. This is probably a huge challenge that I don't think folks give enough attention to. So you have to understand the data you need versus the data that you have. So you might think, I have all the data I need. Well, you could be missing a key driver of accuracy that you can control or influence. And so you have to ask yourself some tough questions. Is the data you have accurate? Can you verify the accuracy of the data? Where is it coming from? Is the data you need timely? Do you getting it in time to do your forecast? Do you have too much data? I think I'm not a big fan of the word big data, but some folks have to go on a data diet. And so I think for companies, given that we've got 34% seeing you have the data, and that was the way I used to work at a submersible motor manufacturer, and there weren't a lot of things, right, that were driving revenues on that side. So we had a pretty good thing in an AR side. So in some cases you might need, you don't need that much data. And so let's not waste our time trying to digest all this data. Anyone who has statistics knows that I can stick 100 variables into a regression model and the R squared is going to go up to whatever, 0.98, whatever that might be, but that doesn't really tell me anything. It's not really adjusted. And so we got to be careful there. And then also, what additional data do you need? You might want to ask your folks, as Tracy mentioned, that bottom-up approach. Let's ask our folks. The data is coming from them, and maybe they're helping us forecast on a country level. What do they need? What do they think? So let's not use corporate to push things down. Let's harmonize what we're doing. What data do you need? When do you need it? And then how are you going to get it? And so these are all important questions to ask and have the conversation. It seems like common sense, but the reason I do what I do, if people like it sometimes, is that I bring it down to the common sense level and make you think about something or ask a question. And so this slide, although compact, I think is really important. Tracy, why don't you go ahead and take us through number 5 and tell us about how folks should need to understand their inherent barriers that exist at their company.
Right, and I think it ties directly into the questions that you just asked. As you think about why you have variances and the size of those variances and whether or not your forecast is meeting the needs of your business, you've got to look at why that might be. Why might it not be meeting the needs? Do you not have the right resources? It's taking too long. You're gathering data from way too many people and you're unable to get it in a timely manner and getting accurate data from those sources. Is there a better way or a better source of that data? Are you definitely plugged into the right person, the right place, the right system? Getting alignment between your direct and indirect forecast. You know, FP&A is always creating one, Treasury creates one. Rarely do they seem that they have the kind of the same results, or at least showing the same direction. So there might be a variety of different reasons that you don't have an accurate forecast. So you've got to really look to plugging those, understanding why, and then fixing that. Much of that can be handled with technology. The goal for around a forecast should be to automate it. It shouldn't be that you require a whole lot of hours, a whole lot of people, and a whole lot of time. Instead, if you're able to automate the extraction of data from different systems, allow users, if they have some things that have to be put in manually, allow each one to do it automatically and have a system consolidate that automatically as opposed to you doing it in Excel. Similarly, that need for automation is how and where technology can help. There's a couple key things when you look at technology. It can help with automation and with accuracy. And when you talk about automation, it might be APIs, it might be robotic process automation, RPA, that connection between multiple systems. It might be gathering that data in data lakes and making sure that you have the right information and, of course, the right way to visualize it. But what's key is on the right. Artificial intelligence, specifically machine learning, can actually help drive the accuracy by improving your forecast iteration over iteration. All the rest of those are all about automation. But AI is the only thing that's really going to help drive up the accuracy.
Yeah, thanks, Tracy. Just kind of dovetail on that a little bit before we move to number 7. And so I think it's incredibly important that on the left we have automation enabler. And the other thing that does is it gives us more time to focus on value add activities, an analysis and variance analysis. So in surveys that I've been involved with, when we talk about how much time is spent, right, on the analysis and the communication, the story behind the numbers, it's not a lot. And so that automation enabler, right, helps us free up that time. It removes a productivity drag, right, across. And the artificial intelligence allows us to continue learning. So it lets the data tell us the story and helps us interpret the story. And those regression models are fit. So there's a certain model that seems to fit most often. I don't know the exact word, forced regression, whatever that might be, but the system does that. So when I was back in Treasury, I tried to come in and do a regression or Monte Carlo simulation to get better forecasting accuracy, and my product manager was using a simple moving average with the shifter for weather, and I couldn't get close to his accuracy. So just kind of that lesson which Tracy talked about, let your data needs to tell you the story. You don't need to Tracy put it so eloquently, you don't need to use a hammer, right, at all times. So just more on the visibility, which is something that I always talk about. You can't manage what you can't see. So you need visibility into your processes, into your supplier activity, your customer activity, and that needs to be across all folks that have those interactions. And so finance and treasury, we do impact the customer experience. We do impact the supplier experience. We do need to control the tone and tenor of our interactions. And so we need to see everything in AP/AR, as Tracy mentioned, which is just too bad it's still going on. We're going to have a session about that in my upcoming virtual event. How do we align with FP&A? Why do we have different forecasts? Why are we spending time right? And maybe there's a little different purpose. Maybe one's for balance sheet, one's for something else. But however, let's make sure we're using the best message. Let's share that. Treasury, we should have a tremendous acumen for cash forecasting. And not that our FP&A people don't have that, but let's harmonize our data, our expertise there. And then anything else that impacts cash movements and why. This is an exercise I went through many moons ago. They still use it. And you might have a huge company, but you should have an intern or someone go through this. I want someone to give me a presentation on every single action that causes money to come in or go out of the company. People, process, and technology. Who impacts it? How do they impact it? And it might take 2 weeks, it might take a month, but it's incredibly valuable for you to see where those improvements can be made. And guess what? It would have been valuable in the remote reality. So any business environment, this facilitates business agility. The other key thing, which I also want to touch on, is the accountability. And so from that bottom-up approach, as Tracy mentioned, there's a presentation from 2019. I have a hyperlink here, so let me know if you want to copy the presentation. This is the best that I've seen. It really takes you how to do a direct and indirect model. So you have your forecasting, and in this sense, cash flow forecasting lead. You have, okay, these are the receipts, disbursements, treasury. These are all the things that are going to impact it. Okay, who owns it, right? Maybe our director of credit, AP, treasurer, VP. So these are and then this is where these are the owners. Let's give them accountability for that, right? Maybe this goes to a country level. Who's the input providers? Down here. So let's empower these folks, right, to offer the data that is needed to these folks if they own that forecast or they're going to provide it and own it. Let's have these people bless it, and then let's push that up to that high level. Again, it's not that we want to push down from corporate. It's we want to harmonize. We need to take the intuition of all these folks here that understand the drivers of revenue and cost and validate that with data. So let's go ahead and I didn't want to skip this, and very incredibly important. Tracy, will you please take us through tip number 9, please?
Right. I think it ties into what you just said, which is harmonizing it all. There's different stages along the forecasting process. It's gathering the data, running them through models that might be simple or more complex, figuring out how well you've done that variance analysis, and then redoing it over and over again. And at various points along the line, down at the bottom, there'll be reporting where you're reporting out your results for that daily purpose of kind of daily borrowing and investing, maybe for the quarterly purpose of more strategic decision making. But that central part of it, those first 3 steps, that can often be done with technology. So if you're struggling to get these right, that's what you can look to improve with technology.
Thanks, Tracy. It's going to dovetail on this a little bit, and I've done webinars with High Radius in the past about the importance of reporting, understanding who your consumers are. So let's understand what they need and when they need it and why they need it. So reporting and accuracy impact decisions. So maybe the folks, maybe at the lower end of the pyramid, the AR or AP, those folks need a different level of information and different metrics there. So I think that's important. So number 10 is this continuous mindset, right? And this is what really facilitates that. You need to monitor your time allocation, and I think this is going on in the remote environment, which is great. Understand what your people are doing and why they're doing it. You want to mitigate those non-value add activities. Let's get the accountability, and let's get the right incentives, and let's take note of that employee experience as well. And so the bottom line here in the conversations that we've had. So if we will get to you with your questions afterwards. I apologize, no time for Q&A. We had a lot of content to get through, so I'm hoping that you found the content and insights valuable. And so this is kind of the bottom line here. You want to clearly define the goals of your forecast. You need to understand your data. You need to work closely internally to capitalize on the understanding, again, the impacts, costs, and revenues. And you want to take more control over the cash movements. The more control you have, the better the predictability is. You want to be proactive and engage and identify those who face similar cash forecasting challenges. Same industry, right? You can still go to these virtual events, go to LinkedIn, online communities, and you may need to build the business case for forecasting accuracy. You have to sell it, communicate with impact, and then you want to invest in the right technology, but also the right solution partner, and that's incredibly important, someone that really understands your business. So let me go ahead and launch our final polling question as we share a few closing thoughts with everyone. So I want to let everyone know, if you haven't seen upcoming event, which will obviously cover cash forecasting and much more. HighRadius is a key partner, the lead sponsor with Treasury Webinars, the first ever full-blown Treasury and Finance virtual conference. We're going to be going live September 15th through the 17th. So a full-blown conference means not just webinars back to back. We all know Ernie's really good at webinars, but it's time for me and HighRadius and other companies that support that leadership to take to the next level. Everything you can do at an in-person event and more. So this event is not going to cost anything for people to experience. It's going to be an actual event. You're going to control your event experience. And I think that's going to be incredibly powerful when people see you can control how you network, how you consume content, how you can find people at the conference, how you can network. And so if anyone wants more information on that, if you haven't registered yet, I also want to remind you that just taking 5 minutes to take the Global Recovery Monitor survey can be incredibly valuable to you and your team as well. So I'm going to give folks a couple more seconds here to make sure you respond to the survey. And in closing, I would like to once again thank Tracy for her insights and expertise. So thank you so much, Tracy, for spending time with us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Ernie, and I really look forward to this virtual forum. I think it'll be an amazing experience as we all learn how to work remotely and do things we've always done before in person, do them remotely now.
Thank you so much, Tracy. I also want to once again thank HighRadius, who shares my commitment to thought leadership, and to everyone in the audience. I appreciate each and every one of you. Stay safe, stay healthy, and make the rest of your day great, everyone.